I wanted to do a reaction to this Amber Heard podcast. Um, on my Facebook page, my kind of artist page, I was talking about the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial a lot while it was going on. I was very much kind of raising how kind of unequal it was that she would be judged for certain things that he's not judged for, etc., and how it was very, very imbalanced how it was portrayed in the media, and how the evidence was clearly edited in the court to sit in his favour. So someone's made a podcast about that, exposing the evidence that was left out and stuff like that. So Fox E said Amber's a raging narcissist. Well, I think the whole world's full of narcissists, but I'll say this, I'm team Amber Heard 100%. Amber Heard was shamed in a way that nobody else gets shamed publicly for things that she done that men don't get shamed for. She didn't do much wrong in any of the way she handled her case, didn't do much narcissistic in public really, and got labelled as that basically because she's a woman. Johnny Depp did horrifically disgusting things that was revealed in the trial. He did ridiculously disgusting things in how he treated her in public, and the entire trial was basically Johnny Depp not being able to handle that his wife had left him, so he used his privilege and power to get the entire world to bully his ex-wife. That's literally what happened in that trial. And that doesn't mean she's innocent and not a narcissist, that's for sure, because I think most people are narcissists, so that doesn't come out of that. But what she's done publicly in this trial isn't that. She's just stood there and said, and actually she hasn't done much publicly at all. She's never actually spoke much publicly about him or anything, never tried to get attention for it, never tried to make a trial, never took him to court, never. He took her to court, he took the son to court. All of it was done by him. She hasn't actually done anything in any of it. Stephen Trafford said, I'm here for the music, but I support the politics and social awareness. I'm supporting when I can. Foxy said, okay, your opinion is valid. Yeah. And that's just my opinion, innit? And like I say, well, it's more than my opinion because I feel like I will prove it. I haven't watched this interview, right? I haven't seen this podcast, yeah? I'm going to put it on the screen. Episode 1, Missing Evidence. It's called Who's Trolled Amber, right? And it is by, let's look at who it's by. So it's by a channel called Tortoise. Let's just read the description. Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard was a celebrity trial of the century. He won, she lost, but was Amber Heard the target of an organised trolling campaign? A former spy puts Alexei reluctantly on trial, but he quickly discovers this is much more than a story of celebrities at war. This is Who Trolled Amber, a new podcast series about how our own thoughts and opinions can be moulded without us even realising. Who Trolled Amber is the latest series in Tortoise Investigates, the home of Tortoise's award-winning Investigate series. So yeah, this is like an investigation of how our brains may have been controlled to form certain opinions about Amber Heard. And trust me, like I often get accused of always taking the women's side and these kind of things, like, or having a bias towards women's rights and stuff like that. And I've got other friends who usually agree with me, usually are on my side with this kind of thing, and they were like, I usually agree with you, but not on this one. Like, Amber Heard, you got it wrong with this one, and then they pull out the examples, and this was before the trial. And they pull out some of these things in the evidence here. And I know certain things where I was like, nah, you're wrong. And I'd explain it to them. But I'm sure this is going to show me a lot that I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So I've also, I've got a lot of people involved in like supporting Amber Heard on my Facebook. And I've spoken to them about doing a live where they come on and speak. And they know they'll get all the papers out because they've read through the actual, like, both trials, the English trial and the American trial. And I hadn't worked out how to arrange that because I couldn't get guests on here, but I got guests on here on the last show, so I'm going to do that soon. But I think I should do some of these episodes first. So this is actually quite long, a video. I don't know if I'm going to do all of it right now, but we'll give it a go, alright?
Tortoise.
Just a warning before we start, this series contains strong language and descriptions of violence.
There was a moment where I got up one day and I got on social media, I got on Twitter, and I just noticed that my feed was just absolutely overrun with content.
This story starts with a spy. Well, a former spy.
And I didn't have a whole lot of interest in learning much more about it than what I'd seen in the headlines. Like, I'm not particularly interested in celebrity culture stuff.
Someone who spends a lot of time online.
And so I started to try to excise that content from my timeline. And it became apparent fairly quickly, within a couple of days, because I could feel myself getting frustrated, that was not working, which is unusual. I'm actively seeking to not see this stuff, and it is still filling up my feed. And, you know, being a career investigator, my brain kind of went, oh, there's something going on here.
Daniel Mackey used to work for the Canadian government. I can't really go into more detail than that, but he specialises in something called open source intelligence. That means he pieces together clues on the internet to track down bad guys. He's basically an online detective. Daniel's gone private now. He works for this big accounting group, but he still wants to use his powers for good.
This is mad. I've already listened to like podcast shows like this where it's like a whole kind of production and music and all of this kind of stuff going on. Alright, so we're setting the stage. He's a spy, and he hasn't said even Amber Heard content he was seeing, but he was seeing a lot of content on the internet about something, and he couldn't avoid it even as much as he tried.
So, a bit like a lawyer who takes on some cases free of charge, Daniel helps out a few lucky journalists like me.
I think we've spoken like more than a dozen times, and this is the first time that I've actually seen you in the flesh.
Really? You've never seen my face?
I don't think I've ever seen your face.
By 2023, we'd worked together on several stories, mostly involving internet hoaxes or conspiracies. When he's interested in a story, Daniel goes into overdrive. He'll text me in the middle of the night, or he'll leave me these long voicemails.
.uk. So I checked to see if there's anything else linked to that. When I ran it through a different tool that I have, I found a Skype profile that was registered to that email address using...
Daniel is an expert at navigating the dark corners of the internet. He's seen it all. That is, until the spring of 2022, when...
I feel like, yeah, obviously I'm just looking at this as like, oh, the missing evidence is going to prove all of this about her thing, but the title, Who Trolled Amber, and now that I'm realising it's about a spy, we might be quite shocked by what it's going to reveal. Is this going to reveal that there was some, like, literally behind the scenes, like, orchestrated campaign run to kind of destroy her in the media? Because that would be very interesting. And it's already been proven that a lot of the content that was against her was run by bots.
Something happens which takes him by surprise.
I spent a period of time investigating disinformation campaigns, so foreign influence operations, information warfare stuff. This was more akin to that, what I was witnessing.
Information warfare? Daniel is interested enough that he talks to his contacts inside the intelligence community.
I said, hey, you know, you guys are also watchers of this type of stuff. Are you seeing this too? And all of them had the same reaction as me. They went, yeah, it's really weird. Your Sherlock Holmes signal kind of goes off and you're like, what the hell's going on here?
A few months later, he calls me and he tells me what he's noticed about a certain story and how it played out online.
Hundreds of miles away from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, this high-profile case will be right here in Fairfax County.
The trial of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard is a global phenomenon.
From real-life political drama to real-life Hollywood drama, Johnny Depp versus his ex-wife, Amber
Depp
Heard.
is suing Heard in a $50 million defamation suit based on a Washington Post op-ed.
Depp sued Heard, yeah?
The biggest court case since O.J. Simpson was accused of murdering his wife back in 1995, almost 3 decades ago.
She is accused of defaming her one-time husband and lover. He is accused of being so in the grip of drink and drugs that he would become like a monster consumed by rage and violence.
For 7 weeks, weeks over the spring of 2022, this thing is everywhere.
This has moved away from like a news story or a lawsuit, and it's transformed into a cultural moment.
It just dominates everything.
Both COVID and inflation are on the rise, and there's a war in Ukraine. But Americans are much more interested in talking about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial.
And I remember thinking, no thanks. I was...
Comment says, Meghan Markle attempts this on Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Sad. What do you mean she attempts this? She attempts... Who's Catherine, the Princess of Wales? Is that who... I'm not that up on who all the royals are or whatever. Is that who she accuses of racism or whatever? I mean, Meghan Markle, without any shadow of a doubt, is the victim of what Amber is the victim of. Like, she's the victim of a complete media campaign to brainwash us into hating her when she hasn't really done anything wrong to anyone. So I don't know. I don't really know what that's about.
Working on another story at the time, so I didn't really know much about the case. But my general reaction to it was, this is a celebrity story. Not that interesting. But for Daniel, something about the online coverage of the case intrigued him. Daniel is a liberal. He's the sort of person who'd naturally support someone like Amber Heard, a woman who claims she's a victim of abuse. He also knows how social media algorithms work, how they identify what you're interested in and then serve you similar content which they think you'll like. If the internet's echo chamber was working properly, Daniel would expect to see at least some pro-Amber Heard content on his social media feeds. But what he actually saw was the exact opposite. Almost everything was trashing Amber and promoting Depp, a stream of misogyny and hate directed towards her.
Madness. So he's saying you would usually see something on the other side, right? And with this, for whatever, like, for a strange reason, you literally saw nothing on her side. Alright, let's continue.
Things that I think actively damaged some of the progress that the Me Too movement made, for example. Really quite uncomfortable stuff with respect to her in particular.
The Me Too movement changed global conversations about sexual assault and domestic violence. It gave women who were abused a voice and a platform to tell their stories for the first time. But Amber didn't get sympathy. She got vitriol.
The queen of domestic violence, claiming that she's a victim of violence, is the biggest joke.
What other options does a violent, predatory narcissist have when they are desperate to control their victim?
Your voice is gone, Amber Heard. Die, bitch.
The scale of the attacks was staggering. Between 2016 and 2022, more than 800,000 tweets were posted with the hashtag Amber Heard is an abuser.
800,000. You know what I'm saying? This is a big campaign by a big multi-millionaire, powerful man.
Only 15,000 tweets used the hashtag Johnny Depp as an abuser, even though she was the one accusing him of abuse.
And you see that? They act like, yeah, all these people that are pro-Depp, yeah, they act like she was the one who cancelled him in the beginning and blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? But from the beginning, she was getting the hate from early on.
And that wasn't all. Tens of thousands of posts across social media called Amber a gold digger, a whore, and much worse.
I'm coming for you when you get out of court.
A lot of that hate came from real people. Johnny Depp has some really devoted fans, and they do not like Amber Heard.
Who wants to join me in my expedition to brutally murder Amber Heard?
But
hear that? Murder threats. Actual murder threats.
Daniel also noticed that many of the online attacks came from accounts that seemed less than human. Accounts with odd names, which seemed to be acting in a coordinated way, as if someone was controlling their movements, like the conductor of a giant orchestra.
We don't want pirates without Johnny
Amber Heard
Depp.
is an abuser.
You big, fat, white, nasty smelling fat bitch.
just to play devil's advocate, what kind of chance do you think that everything actually was organic in this case? Or at least
I would say there's a 0.1% chance that was all organic. 0.1% chance that was all organic. There's absolutely, can I swear? There is no fucking way that was all organic. There's no fucking way. I would bet you $1 million. I would bet you $1 million.
Just to be clear, Daniel thinks that someone deliberately set out to trash Amber's reputation online. Either by buying bots, which are automated accounts that in this case could have pumped out thousands.
And it's as simple as that. That was his plan. From the beginning, he was like, right, I've been accused of this. And remember, she didn't even really come out hard at him or nothing. So he's really done this to himself. She didn't come out hard, but he was like, right, I've been, people are saying I may have done this and this. So I'm going to literally destroy her reputation in order to turn them all around. And he literally, that just shows how much of a misogynist world we live in. He was able to do it to a seriously excessive extent.
Thousands of anti-Amber messages or hashtags, or by employing real people, internet trolls, who could have pretended to be Johnny Depp fans online. For me, these possibilities were interesting. But to be honest, even after talking to Daniel, I still had a nagging feeling. Would it be that big a deal if a PR company had bought a bunch of bots to defend a famous actor?
Yes.
And don't we know already that rich people sometimes play dirty? But then I started speaking to people about the Depp case, including some of my friends, and I was shocked by how many of them had a negative opinion of Amber Heard without really being able to explain why. They all said
literally what I said at the beginning of this thing, right? My own brethren, and I'll sit and have the argument with them, and like they'll still push it. They'll give their reason. I'll prove their reason wrong. They'll give their quote. I'll find the actual full quote and give the context and everything, and then they'll just go, "Oh yeah, but," and have no end to their sentence.
Said something like, "I didn't watch the trial, but isn't Amber a bit crazy?" Or, "Wasn't there violence on both sides?" Or, "I reckon that Johnny was the real victim." And that really did trouble me. Because if it's possible for sensible people to end up hating a person without really knowing why, if it's possible for someone with a vested interest to plant opinions in people's heads simply by serving them up enough content, then that type of manipulation isn't just a celebrity issue. It's much more serious than that. If your opinions on Amber Heard can be artificially swayed, then why not your opinions about a politician, a business, or even a war?
And if we go and watch the documentary about Cambridge Analytica and all of that, we already know this has been done. You know what I'm saying? This has been done. It is happening right now over the war in Israel and Palestine. It is happening. Yeah, we are being controlled in this way. It was happening in Trump's run for president. It's happened in the Conservative run for government here, the Brexit. Like, they are controlling us. It's very, like, there's numbers of times it's been broken down and proven. And it's mad because it's like the people who even know that, who think I'm awake to everything that's going on, will still be the people who come here and comment and go, "Oh, Amber Heard's a wrong one," not realizing they've been told to think like that.
Is your perception of reality being altered without you even knowing it?
There are many things we can say about this very toxic industry that is really
appear to exhibit what I would say are indications that they have been a rented bot network or a for-hire.
It's 100% inauthentic. I have no doubts about that.
I received DMs on Twitter that basically said, "We know where you live, we know where you are, and we're going to come find you, and we're going to hurt you."
I felt like I was living the Truman Show.
Got a comment from Steve Trefford. "I don't hate them. I'm ambivalent. Most people are when we really explore people's feelings. They are just caught up in the drama and regurgitating opinions of their influencers." Who do you mean? Who you don't hate? Who? I'm not sure if you don't hate Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, celebrities, or you don't hate. I don't know. Who do you mean?
Because I thought at any time my story and my work would be revealed.
I'm Alexi Mostras, and from Tortoise, this is Who Trolled Amber.
Right.
Episode 1.
He's saying he don't hate either Johnny or Amber. Yeah, I mean, I don't hate either of them, but from me following the trial, I do take issue with Johnny because if this breaks down what I think is going to break down, and the fact that he hired a company to literally abuse her on the internet, give her death threats and all of that, like, and it shows how he used male power in that way to literally win over the world and turn them. She's had to move out of the country. Like, what she's experienced is horrific. She's experienced one of the most biggest examples of like mass online abuse in history. Like, it's crazy what she's gone through, and they haven't proven that she's done anything wrong to the extent to warrant it at all. They definitely haven't proven anything like that. Yeah, they've proven a couple things. Yeah, she's not perfect, but there's no perfect victim either, right? Neither of them are perfect, as a lot of people have said, right? But don't get me wrong, I don't hate Johnny Depp. I think Johnny Depp has never taken accountability for his actions, and Amber Heard has been made to take accountability for what her part was 10, 100-fold, 1,000-fold compared to what it actually was. And it's too much what she's actually had to go through, and he's pretty much got away with it and been celebrated as a hero. Steve said Donald Trump made it to president. I'm not surprised Johnny is just as villainous. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm not that surprised either, and I bet they probably like each other quite a bit.
Missing evidence.
I only paused that to say, whoa, that whole thing was just the intro. That was just setting the stage. Now we're actually going to start the episode. All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, I was very interested in this case. I was going to just listen to this podcast. I just wanted to hear it. And I thought, you know what? I think it's like 6 episodes. So obviously I'm going to do one. I'm just going to do one every now and then. Do you know what I mean? I might just come on live. A few times and only do this, like quickly just do an episode, and that'll be the end of the live kind of thing. Or I might just do one each episode. I don't know.
I received death and rape threats. I received threats and comments saying, like Amber, I have a punchable face. All kinds of awful things.
It's a cold, wet day in central London, and
I'm assuming that's going to be someone who's her supporter, yeah? Because remember, I was a big Amber Heard supporter during the trial. I received that. I received death threats. I received threats of, I hope you die, I hope your family and your children die, like all of that. It was crazy, bro. Like I'm saying, like honestly crazy. The hate that I got for even just showing evidence, like crazy.
I'm with my producer, Xavier. We've gone to see someone who knows Amber Heard well.
My name's Jennifer Robinson. I'm a barrister at Doughty Street Chambers, and I was counselled for Amber Heard in relation to the UK defamation proceedings.
Okay,
Jen is a kind of superstar media lawyer. She's the longtime barrister of Julian Assange, the WikiLeaks founder, and she's represented the UN and other major organisations. Between 2018 and 2020, she worked very closely with Amber, collecting evidence about Johnny Depp's abusive behaviour. But Jen didn't represent Amber in the US trial, the huge media event that took place in Virginia in 2022. She represented her in London in an earlier trial 2 years before.
Where Johnny Depp was found guilty, on 12 of 14 counts of domestic violence. That is still proven. Like, that's still proven in court. Those things have not been overturned. The US trial didn't prove any of it not to be true. Like, none of that happened. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's people, these stupid people who follow trials through social media think, oh, that means that's been proven. That means that's been... No, that's not how the law works. Your little ego and opinion of what you want it to be and your opinion of wanting to bully someone doesn't actually work and actually amount to that.
When I first spoke with Amber, it was in the context of the fact that Johnny Depp had sued for defamation here in the United Kingdom.
If you're not familiar with the case, don't worry. The background is simple. When Amber Heard and Johnny Depp get married in 2015, they seem like the ultimate Hollywood power couple. Despite well-known drug and alcohol issues, Depp is still one of Hollywood's most famous names, the star of Donnie Brasco, Edward Scissorhands, and the Pirates of the Caribbean.
There are many pirates in rock and roll, you know.
Amber is pretty hot property too. She's about to star in Aquaman, a huge blockbuster that will take more than $1 billion at the box office.
She's a superhero in her own right. She's super strong.
But their marriage is a disaster. Away from the cameras, it disintegrates almost immediately. The couple divorce just 15 months after the wedding. At the time of their divorce, Amber is granted a restraining order against Depp. She alleges that Depp has been violent against her, but the pair seem to want to move on.
She alleges to police, right, and authorities. She did not allege this publicly, just to be clear. She took out a restraining order and alleged it to police to get that restraining order. So that's when the abuse towards her started. For her taking that restraining order and looking for protection for what she claimed was going on at the time, that is when abuse publicly started against her.
They settle their divorce and they release a joint statement saying,
"Our relationship was intensely passionate and at times volatile, but always bound by love."
Fast forward to April 2018, and The Sun, a British tabloid newspaper, publishes an article about the new Fantastic Beasts movie, which is going to star Johnny Depp. The piece criticises J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter author and Fantastic Beasts creator, for casting Depp in the movie.
And let's just be real, she's been caught a lot of heat for her transphobia and all that. She's very right-wing, so yeah, she was fine with the fact she's fine with casting someone who's been known as being an abuser and a violent husband is no surprise to anybody.
The paper says that there's overwhelming evidence that Depp has been violent towards Amber. It explicitly calls him a wife-beater.
But let's just say something really important here, just so we know we're not dealing with bias. Fuck the Sun newspaper. Do you know what I'm saying? And we do not expect that they had any honest values in why they were doing that. The Sun is a horrible newspaper that in the UK we do not respect and do not love. And that's why it's actually interesting that the Sun beat him, because the Sun lose court cases all the time. The Sun don't even try to be on the right side of things.
Depp sues the newspaper almost immediately, and he brings the case in London, where The Sun is published and where libel rules are notoriously weighed in favour of claimants like him.
Yeah, see?
Under English law, it's up to The Sun to prove, on the balance of probability, that Depp has been violent. It's a big ask. And Amber's not a defendant in the British case. It's Depp versus The Sun, not Depp versus Heard. She doesn't have to give evidence, and she doesn't want to either.
She never wanted to relive what happened in her relationship. She had to go on the stand and talk about what she describes as the most traumatic incidents in her life, not just in front of a judge and in front of Mr. Depp himself and his legal team, but in front of the world's media.
But Jen knows that if Amber doesn't turn up and The Sun loses, then Depp can forever claim that he's not an abuser and that the trial proves it. So she flies to London.
The first day of trial, Amber was really nervous. You can only try to imagine what it would be like to be in her shoes, but this was the first time she was going...
This is very interesting to just hear, because, you know, I followed the second trial a lot. I know a lot of stuff about the first trial from conversations that go on, looking certain things up, but I haven't really looked at a timeline of where she was at and what she did. So they've done a good job here. You know what I'm saying? They've gone and speak to people to show how that happened.
To see Mr. Depp in person.
Sorry, and it's just, I want to fix my sidecar again. It's crashing non-stop because I want to pull this up a little bit. Actually, I've got a way of pulling it up here. Excellent. I can pull it up from here. So, yeah, it just kind of shows that she she wasn't the one trying to be public about this. Everyone goes on about how she wanted to be this face of domestic violence and stuff like that. She didn't want to. She was trying to keep things private.
Talk about what she describes as the most traumatic.
The newspaper almost immediately, and he brings the case in London, where The Sun is published and where libel rules are notoriously weighed in favour of claimants like him. Under English law, it's up to The Sun to prove, on the balance of probability, that Depp has been violent. It's a big ask. And Amber? Amber's not a defendant in the British case. It's Depp versus The Sun, not Depp versus Heard. She doesn't have to give evidence, and she doesn't want to either.
She never wanted to relive what happened in her relationship. She had to go on the stand and talk about what she describes as the most traumatic incidents in her life, not just in front of a judge and in front of Mr. Depp himself and his legal team, but in front of the world's media.
But Jen knows that if Amber doesn't turn up and The Sun loses, then Depp can forever claim that he's not an abuser and that the trial proves it. So she flies to London.
The first day of trial, Amber was really nervous. You can only try to imagine what it would be like to be in her shoes, but this was the first time she was going to see Mr. Depp in person since they were divorced. In advance of the trial, because of the intense online hate and attacks that she had faced, that I had faced as her lawyer, the newspaper...
Just to reiterate what I said before, this is before the English trial, right? They're literally breaking down that she was already receiving abuse online, like ridiculous levels of abuse online. Nobody knew any facts yet. Nobody knew anything. So even her lawyer is receiving violent, like death threats, all sorts from them. So all this lies, their whole narrative that Johnny Depp supporters have is that she turned the whole world on Johnny Depp and they were all on her side in the beginning. They were not.
And the court had arranged for us to be able to enter through the judge's security entrance because we didn't know what was going to be outside court waiting for her when we arrived. If it was anything like what was happening online, we presumed it wouldn't be very pleasant.
The trial starts on the 7th of July 2020.
When we got to the court, there were a bunch of protesters outside, lots of Justice for Johnny signs, even people dressed up as Johnny Depp. And they were all milling about waiting for us to arrive. When we got to the gate, I was sat with Amber in the back of the car. We had her security guard in the front of the car with the driver. The car was encircled with paparazzi banging on the window. They do that to get the person to look up so they can get their shot. But also some of the protesters sort of circled the car and started shouting at us. Amber lies, you're an abuser, all kinds of insults about being a gold digger, being a whore.
Despite
Crazy.
representing some pretty famous people, Jen has never seen anything like this.
For someone who's there to give evidence about domestic violence, to have these people shouting and screaming at you in a really aggressive way, I found it offensive.
The trial lasts 3 weeks. Amber is cross-examined over 3 gruelling days by Depp's lawyers. According to Jen, they use tactics reminiscent of the 1970s, bringing up some of the worst stereotypes about domestic violence.
If it was true, why didn't she go to the police? If it was true, she would have more evidence of the injury.
And this is what courts do to this day. Yeah, they're saying to the 1970s, but this is what courts do. Courts still use horrifically horrible narratives towards women when they're going to talk about these things, and the whole system is actually a mess.
The fact is, Amber had a lot of evidence of injury. She had photographs, which they claim she had doctored. They even suggested with all this evidence she'd collected of images of bruises, you know, where's the video of him punching her or grabbing her by the hair? What domestic violence victim is able to take a selfie or film when they're being hit?
Before and during the
Right.
trial, Amber also faces thousands of attacks against her on social media, attacks that seem coordinated.
I started to question the authenticity of the activity going on when I received a whole raft of emails and tweets after Amber appeared with me at a Women's Day event associated with my chambers. It was quite early in the case. It was before the UK trial. I was acting for Amber and working with her in preparing for that case, but the trial hadn't happened yet. And it was the first time I really started to see what appeared to be inauthentic coordinated activity. So the same tweets, the same emails. It looked orchestrated. And when I say orchestrated, it was just one tweet would happen and then hundreds or thousands of tweets would come saying the same thing with the same hashtags and calling her Amber the abuser, Amber's a liar, justice for Johnny Depp, making awful comments about Amber and about us or about me as her lawyer. Attacks.
It's so important this is happening, you know. It's so important this is happening. Like I don't even know what I'm gonna label this, but we need to really obviously, as Stephen said, I'm more comfortable to write hyperbole titles, so I'll be coming out of a title saying Amber Heard is innocent, or Amber Heard was set up by a bot campaign, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll be going off.
So my professionalism, the way I look, my personal life, but also threats of violence.
Jen is so concerned that she emails Amber's lawyers in America, asking them to get to the bottom of what she calls a targeted online campaign to undermine her client. But they never do. Finally, on the 28th of July, the trial is over. The judge retires to make his decision. 3 months later, Jen hears her computer ping. It's the judgment. Over 129 pages, Mr. Justice Nicol concludes that Depp has been violent against Amber on 12 separate occasions.
As I said, 12 or 14.
He finds that Depp has headbutted her, kicked her on an aeroplane, pushed her against a wall.
Headbutted her. He's admitted that. That's literally on tape, yeah. Kicked her on an aeroplane. Literally text messages from his security texting Amber about seeing it and how Depp apologised for it after, or like felt bad about it after. Like, these things are literally proven. Like, all these people that are Johnny Depp is innocent, these things are literally facts.
And grasped her by the throat. The judge finds that Heard has been the victim of, and I quote, sustained and multiple assaults. The next day, the Sun newspaper front page, under a picture of a flustered-looking Johnny Depp, runs the headline, "He is a wife-beater." Amber Heard...
Still fuck the Sun. It's good they won this case because it's right, but still fuck the Sun.
Heard is...
Steve said, mate, I wasn't saying you are hyperbolic, only when you need to be. I know, but that is when I need to be. Just saying. And as for titles, that's clickbait tactics you must use to work in the algorithm, God world. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It is just working the algorithm, innit? But yeah, but some of those titles are hyperbolic as well, innit? Do you know what I'm saying? And the things I'm saying on them. But yeah, I wasn't saying that in a negative way. I'm calm with that.
Is vindicated.
Honestly, I thought great.
And just to expand on that quickly, yeah, I know we spoke about it earlier, but you said hyperbole has its place, right? The thing is, we live in a world of hyperbole of those opposites. Do you know what I'm saying? When you look at this story, the hyperbole is all in Johnny Depp's favour. Yeah, it's all hyperbole against Amber Heard. So yeah, sometimes I want to flip it and be like, okay, well, I have this is going to be hyperbolic the other way. Do you know what I'm saying? And sometimes I take an extreme stance. It relates to what we were talking about earlier. I said this to many people. Like, I take an extreme stance of defending rappers when they blame drill rappers for the violence going on. I take an extreme stance of saying no, it doesn't influence violence. And my reason for that is they're taking an extreme stance that it does. Do you know what I'm saying? When actually the percentage of how much it does is very tiny compared to the way they act it does. I'm saying the percentage of factors that come into that, like all the factors we saw in that video of like poverty and etc, is so much bigger that I'm cool with making that hyperbolic when I say no, it doesn't. Do you know what I'm saying? Stephen Trafford, yeah, good. Don't want to be misunderstood. I'm a fan. Respect, bro. No, respect, bro. Always appreciate your comments, man. You know what I'm saying? I got it. I got exactly what you said. You know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of just embracing it, if anything.
No one can now question her. This judgment is a huge victory for her and for the Sun. The judge lays out in detail the evidence. Surely no one can continue to question her now. This is the end.
And this is the thing, is so literally they proved he was guilty, yeah? So all these guys that are always defending men accused of stuff, they're always like, wait till it's proved in court, wait till this. They're always saying it's going to be proved wrong in court, wait till this, you know, innocent until proven guilty. But then man gets proven guilty and they still carry on the same.
End of it, and it's got to be the end of it. And I was so wrong.
Why are you here? I am here because my ex-husband is suing me.
Amber doesn't know it yet, but her troubles are only just beginning. 18 months after the London trial, she faces another hearing in the US. And this time, she's the defendant.
Amber Turd and Johnny Depp. The defamation trial is set to commence. Amber, your time's up, love.
Jen thinks her client will be okay.
And I said to her at the time, by rights, you will win in the US because it is a more difficult standard of proof in the UK. That the Sun was able to win on a truth defence where they bore the burden of proof. In the US, you should have an easier time of it because the burden is on Johnny Depp to prove not only that what you said was not true, that he didn't hit you, but that you said it with malice. It's a much higher standard.
Here's what happens. 8 months after The Sun publishes its article, Amber writes a piece for the Washington Post. In it, she describes herself as a public figure representing abuse and calls for tougher laws against domestic abusers. She doesn't name Depp, and she doesn't call herself a victim. But that doesn't matter. Depp sues her anyway, claiming that anyone who reads the piece will know that it refers to him.
And it was proven in court, so she's allowed to write that. She's allowed to, you know what I'm saying? And she had been made that by him. She was made that representative of domestic violence by him, by his court case that brought this all out. She never brought it all out in public like that. He brought it all out in public.
He says that Amber's libel has cost him $50 million, including a part in Pirates of the Caribbean 6. On the 11th of April 2022...
Stephen Trevor said, that YouTuber just featured, can't remember his name, another effing outrage merchant. Tests think Gervais is funny. Is that Gervais you're saying, or he's talking about someone else, Garvais? I don't know if this is a typo. I don't know who that is, so I'd have to go back on it. So I'll probably look back on this and try and work out what you're saying later when I'm editing.
The trial of Depp versus Heard finally begins.
This is a case about the impact of Amber Heard's words on Johnny Depp.
The US trial is looking broadly at the same questions as in London, but everything about it seems 10 times bigger. It's like if a low-budget indie movie is remade as a Hollywood blockbuster.
Mr. Depp's team is going to try to turn this case into a soap opera. Why?
Yep.
I'm not really sure, because the evidence isn't pretty for Mr. Depp.
So what are you saying though? Tests think Gervais is funny. Ricky Gervais is funny. Yeah, I don't personally. I can't quite work out the context of that there, but I don't think Ricky Gervais is very funny. Obviously, I love the American Office, which he created, but I don't find Ricky Gervais that funny, and I find his right wing, defend cancel culture humor that he's just leaning into these days pretty rubbish. But I've enjoyed some other stuff of his, I guess. Sorry, I just pulled it up, but I put it too much.
As in London, but everything about it seems 10 times bigger. It's like
The case about the impact of Amber Heard's words on Johnny Depp.
the US trial is looking broadly at the same questions as in London, but everything about it says that Amber's libel has cost him $50 million.
Sorry if I read up too much,
Pirates
but
of the Caribbean 6. On the 11th of April 2022, the trial of Depp versus Heard finally begins.
This is a case about the impact of Amber Heard's words on Johnny Depp.
The US trial is looking broadly at the same questions as in London, but everything about it seems 10 times bigger.
Ricky complained about things you can't say, then says it. Ricky Gervais comedy routine. Yeah, exactly. Him and Dave Chappelle both, man, and they both say it and get away with it and blow up and do loads of success. It's an absolute load of rubbish. I mean, they've ruined themselves, man. I love Dave Chappelle, you know what I'm saying, but he's just become so boring repeating the same nonsense to an audience of people who are essentially just right-wing nutters who want to be able to say whatever they want.
Finally begins.
This is a case about the impact of Amber Heard's words on Johnny Depp.
The US trial is looking broadly at the same questions as in London, but everything about it seems 10 times bigger. It's like if a low-budget indie movie is remade as a Hollywood blockbuster.
Mr. Depp's team is going to try to turn this case into a soap opera. Why? I'm not really sure, because the evidence isn't pretty for Mr. Depp. It's not.
It's not.
You're going to see who the real Johnny Depp is. Behind the red carpets, behind the fame, behind the money, behind the pirate costumes. You're going to see who that man really is.
Outside the Virginia courthouse, Depp fans gather to cheer on their hero. Heckling Amber and her witnesses. Inside court, it's even worse. Against Amber's wishes, the judge allows the trial to be televised.
The cameras are in court, and you can watch every twist and turn live.
Over 7 weeks, hundreds of hours of footage are generated.
From the trending hash.
That's an important point that they said that against Amber's wishes, they had cameras. And what they'll argue, what his supporters argue, oh, that makes us able to see it for what it is rather than hide it. No, what that does is gives uneducated people who like to make memes and take things out of context all of the power to create narrative. Yeah, it's not what gives actually a more steady, balanced view of what's going on.
Hashtag justice for Johnny Depp to the viral memes mocking Amber Heard, even reenacting her claims of abuse for millions of likes.
And he slapped me in my face.
Every smirk, every grimace, every pause, it's all put online, shot from 6 different camera angles, and this helps the case go viral. Really viral. By May 2022, at the height of the trial, TikTok videos using the hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp have been viewed 15.7 billion times.
Today we're going to talk about something I don't think we've ever even spoken to each other about. The Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, defamation trial. Knee-jerk reaction, go. What do you think?
Amber's crazy.
We're going to find out whether or not Amber Heard shit in the bed next on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Never proven, and it's actually proven that it was more likely him. I'll get into that later if they cover it.
Online celebrities with large profiles talk about the case, but they're not the ones who keep Amber's name trending day after day. It's the tens of thousands of smaller social media accounts who do that. Some have only been created during the trial, others are tweeting 24 hours a day.
I missed the trick, because my Facebook blew up so hard when I was supporting Amber. I should have been doing it in videos. But, yeah, oh well. Stephen Trafford put a bunch of comments about comedians and stuff that I haven't got to, but I'm trying to not get a bit distracted because I rewound that bit about 3 times because I was getting distracted. But I want to do an episode one day where we only watch comedy. I said that on my Facebook. Because, we get so serious on it that sometimes I want to have a laugh. I want to do loads of really right-wing comedy that's about cancel culture and all that, so we can still keep it on social issues. But, you know what I'm saying, it will just be laughing at how mental they are.
Lots post about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and nothing else.
Amber Heard is finished.
No one was not. Amber Heard.
The accounts share clips from the trial, cutting them together to make Amber look bad, or they write long threads with their theories on the case. Many of the posts are provably wrong. There are false claims that Amber Heard snorted cocaine on the stand, that she took bits of her
people
testimony
believe that
from a movie, The Talented Mr. Ripley. Some of the content looks automated, but it's hard to tell. The hate all mixes together.
Yeah, it's crazy. People were making memes. That's why everyone I used to argue with, I was like, they would go, you didn't watch the trial. I was like, no, you didn't watch the trial. You watched memes. You watched memes and meme videos.
And if you use the internet like most of us do, scrolling through your socials quickly, you don't have time to double check this stuff. The overall impression is that Amber Heard is definitely lying.
112 says AH's trigger words are victim and liar. They need to capitalize on that.
Abusive, narcissistic years.
Will always be a lying
1950s housewife abuse victim who's dropping her kids off.
Amber does not speak for
what? Wait a minute.
Amber Heard is a monster. Amber Heard.
Steve said, don't do that. That's not comedy, that's brain rot, right-wing comedy. I swear that's an oxymoron. Or maybe we've got to do really left-wing comedies, or at least like lines with what we're talking about on this channel.
Deserves prison.
Fuck you, Amber.
In the UK, Jen and Amber didn't have to worry too much about what was happening online. The case there was decided by a judge who was probably not going to pay TikTok or Twitter much attention. But in the US, the case is being decided by a jury. The most important thing to know about the jury in the Depp Heard case is that they're not sequestered, meaning that they aren't put in isolation after...
Two most important things, yeah? The jury was not sequestered, as he's going to say now. They were not put in isolation away from what's seen in the media. So it's impossible, literally impossible, for them not to be influenced by the media. And this, I'm sure this show will break down, and I will break down, that this trial and the literal verdict was bullied by the media, which also, if they're going to reveal, was paid for from PR companies. They've literally paid for the outcome of this trial, right? That's what it's probably going to come down to, which is crazy. And then the fact that they were able to film it, which Amber Heard. So there was two key things: the fact they were allowed to film it and broadcast it, and then the jury weren't sequestered. So those two things, conclusively, that's it. So anyone with half a brain, any sort of form of intelligence at all, this was not a fair trial. You can't have a fair trial that's allowed to be filmed and the jury are allowed to see what's written in public. Or they're told not to, but they're not kept away from it. So it's just not possible for that trial to have been uninfluenced by the public, and the public, as we're seeing, was influenced by paid PR campaigns.
Leaving court for the day. Even though they're not technically supposed to check the internet, there's nothing to stop them either.
It wasn't until the US trial happened and I observed what can only be described as an even more intense bout of online activity in a circumstance where you've got a jury that was not sequestered. That's where I think it does, and it can, and it did, have a very real impact.
On the 1st of June 2022, the jury finds against Amber Heard and for Johnny Depp, awarding him $10 million in damages. It's a stunning reversal from the UK judgment, which found that Depp had been violent to Amber on no fewer than 12 occasions.
Don't call it a reversal, because I said it before, yeah? I've been enjoying this whole thing, but he's wrong for calling it a reversal. It's not a reversal, it's a separate trial for a separate issue. It was about her words in an article. It was not about his abuse. It was not about disproving his abuse. It was not about proving her abuse. It was about her words in an article. His trial with the Sun was about his abuse, because the Sun had to prove that his abuse happened, and they did. So it's not a reversal.
Amber Heard is interviewed a few days after the trial.
And also they left out that he was also found guilty on one case of one count of defamation. They were both tried for 3 counts of defamation each. He lost one, she was found guilty on all 3, right? But he still lost a count of defamation. So that's not to be left out. He was actually found guilty in both trials.
Vast majority of this trial was played out on social media. I think that this trial is an example of that gone haywire, gone amok, and the jury is not immune to that.
Of course not.
And you could say, well, she would say that, wouldn't she? After all, it's easier to blame the internet. But what if it's true? What if a coordinated online campaign did ramp up the hate against Amber to the point where a jury simply couldn't avoid?
It's not even a what if, man. Like, it's so obvious, but like, I'm glad they're here and I'm hoping they're really going to prove it.
One of the things I find weird about the Depp case is that for all the money and attention thrown at it, no real effort has gone into trying to answer this question. There are rumours about bots, about trolls, about organised campaigns, but it's all conjecture. Lots of heat, but almost no light. So, okay, if this is a movie, it's got my attention. I'm convinced by this point that it's a story worth digging into, a story that could be much bigger than the celebrities in the middle of it. I want to know who trolled Amber. But that's jumping the gun. First, I have to show that bots and trolls were used against her in the first place, that it wasn't just real-life Johnny Depp fans giving her shit. And maybe if I work out what happened, I can find some clues about who might have been behind it. So I start at the beginning. I look through thousands of pages of court documents filed in both the UK and the US. I'm looking for any mention of bots, and they're not difficult to find. There's a deposition given by Amber's agent.
Just as I would go through, daily, just looking at comments or accounts that just had, no followers, no posts, nothing, or following just Amber and Johnny. They weren't consistent with what I know to be actual Instagram accounts.
And this email sent by her publicist.
Our company with 3,000 followers gets killed consistently on Instagram when we post about Amber. There has to be an algorithm that they follow. I've clicked on many of those making obscene comments, and they all seem to be bots.
Jen had...
They're all dead accounts. Like, that's mad, man. Like, it's so obvious it's unreal. Come on, man.
Also told me about a counterclaim filed by Amber against Johnny. A counterclaim is a claim against someone who has already brought a legal action against you. Amber files her counterclaim as part of the US proceedings. She submits it in 2020, a few months after Depp sues her. Basically, from that moment, the couple are suing each other. In her counterclaim, Amber alleges that Depp's team created, coordinated, controlled and/or manipulated social media accounts specifically for the purpose of targeting Miss Heard. In other words, it accuses Depp of orchestrating a bot campaign against her. But this part of the counterclaim is problematic. As evidence of this supposed campaign, Amber's lawyers list out a whole bunch of Twitter accounts that they say are bots.
Oh, so this was actually in, that's basically breaking down, I remember this now, this was actually in the trial, or in the accusations from Amber to Johnny, right? They were saying that already, before the trial happened in the previous trial, that there was a campaign of abuse going against her, right? That was in her counterclaim to him.
But when I look at some of these accounts online, I find that many seem to be real people. I feel pretty certain that the counterclaim gets a lot of stuff wrong. And it seems to have confused Depp's superfans, people obsessed enough with the actor to post 20 or 30 times a day, with bots. So I'm not surprised when I discover that a judge dismissed Amber's claim about bots for lack of evidence more than a year before the US trial.
So they didn't allow it maybe to be brought forward into the case if they dismissed it a year before the trial. Interesting. I mean, he makes a point that there are real ones. Obviously, we do know there were some real ones, like a lot, you know what I'm saying? But were there bots that spread it first and that then influenced the real ones?
And that decision turns out to be critical. Because from the moment that that part of the counterclaim is dismissed, the issue of bots is off the table. When the trial starts at Fairfax County Court in Virginia, and Amber's witnesses eventually take the stand, they aren't even allowed to talk about bots or a bot campaign. Because by then, the issue has already been decided in Depp's favour.
Crazy. And it's not the only thing. I hope they cover more, because it's not the only thing. Because there's evidence in the first trial but with the son that was not put into the second trial. So it may not just be the bots that were paid. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there were certain things that were set up to help Johnny win from before the trial even started.
And that left me wondering, Did any of Amber's witnesses suspect that a bot campaign had occurred, but just couldn't say? Does any evidence exist that wasn't presented at trial?
Be seated.
And also, like, just because you mentioned witnesses, the fact that there's so much hate, such a hate campaign was going on, whether real or bots, definitely influenced her witnesses not to take the stand and not to support her. Like, the public literally bullied her witnesses not to come forward, like, not to stand up for her, and for nobody to support her.
Your next witness?
We call Ron Schnell.
Okay. Schnell.
Schnell.
Thank you, sir.
I go through Amber's witness list, and there's one name that stands out. Ron Schnell. Ron is a computer expert from Miami. His speciality is social media forensics.
I do software projects and manage software projects and architect them. But I also do things like this, where I'm consulting in litigation and sometimes testifying in litigation.
He tells the court that he's analysed huge numbers of tweets posted against Amber Heard, but he only testifies on a relatively narrow point about whether or not anti-Amber tweets went up whenever Depp's lawyer, a guy called Adam Waldman, accused her of faking her abuse claims. By the time the case goes to trial, that narrow question, the thing about the lawyer, is the only part of Amber's counterclaim against Depp that hasn't been struck out.
Mad.
So I wonder, does Ron Schnell know more than he was letting on?
Hello. Hello, how are you? I'm very well, thank you, Ron. How are you? Well, thank you.
In March last year, I give him a call.
Although the judge did throw out the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act claim, I had already done a lot of work relating to it. So this whole question of were there bots, was there an orchestrated campaign, was something I did look into, just never got to see the light of the trial.
Ron explains that when he came onto the case, one of the first things he did was download a whole bunch of tweets which were critical of Amber Heard. We're talking almost 1 million posts, gigabytes worth of data.
I actually used something called Botometer. There's a web version where you can just give it a Twitter handle and it'll tell you whether it thinks it's a bot or not. I fed in hundreds of thousands of anti-Amber Heard tweets and got a lot of data from that.
But his work stopped when the judge threw out most of Amber Heard's counterclaim, meaning that the jury never heard anything about Ron's data. Ron won't go much further on the phone. He needs to check what he's allowed to tell us.
If I were to ask Amber Heard's legal team for their permission to disclose your work in this area, would you be happy for me to look at it? Sure. That's really helpful, thank you.
I feel like I have my first lead. Ron still has his huge database of tweets, hundreds of thousands of anti-Amber messages, perfectly preserved. Within that data might be patterns, networks, links that reveal which accounts were working together. If I can pick up where Ron left off, I might be able to learn about what happened to Amber Heard, who might have been responsible, and the ways we're all being manipulated online. Next time on Who Trolled Amber, we go to Miami to see Ron.
It appears to be some sort of organized attack.
We speak to a Hollywood insider.
She couldn't get an audition, and no one would hire her.
And we learn about disinformation from an emu.
Emmanuel, leave it alone. Emmanuel, don't do it!
We contacted Johnny Depp while making this podcast, but he didn't respond.
Of course he didn't.
Thank you for listening to Who Trolled Amber. Who Trolled Amber is written and reported by me, Alexi Mostras, and by Xavier Greenwood. The producer is Xavier Greenwood. Additional reporting by Katie Riley. Sound design is by Carla Patella. The narrative editor is Gary Marshall. The editor...
So his name's Alexi. Is that what the man was saying earlier? Someone said something about this guy. Was someone saying something negative about them? I don't know who they are. I'll have a bit of look into who they are, but this is interesting. Obviously, he's done a whole investigation. I'm doing my own investigation just sitting here, yeah, and just by listening to his thing. So I'm just investigating through him. For now, I'll probably do this whole series and then I'll go into doing other Amber Heard content and other Amber Heard investigating online. Because, you know, it's something I was so involved in. It actually blew up my Facebook in a lot of ways. I was getting thousands of comments and interactions. So it's something I should come to. And look, this has only got 3,000 views. This isn't like popping off. Like, it's only in a certain community being heard about for some reason, I feel like. Or maybe this got more views on like Spotify and like podcasts and Audible or something. Maybe. It's annoying because I actually want to listen straight through it all right now. But I wanna do it as reaction. So only 800 comments. I want to see what the other episodes are, if possible. But I bet if I click on episode 3 Into the Dark, episode 4 Through the Looking Glass, 5 The Special Relationships, episode 2 Gold Dust. That looks like I clicked on it already. That might be one I clicked on and started. Public Enemy. Alright, so we're going to continue this Amber Heard journey. Hashtag I stand with Amber Heard always.